Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar. Harriet, you can now take over. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Martin, for welcoming us on board. I would wish to thank the organizing committee for bringing us together to have this memorial lecture on Honorable Ken Okoth, the late. Members, you'll agree with me that it's been 10 years since the enactment of the new constitution dispensation, but so much is yet to be achieved in terms of realizing the same. It is important that we are here today to review the good work of the late Ken Okoth. He was a man of high integrity, a man who left or engraved the people's hearts with the works of his hands. We also want to believe that not all leaders really are born, but some are made, and some are actually shaped within the environment that they grow in and the environment that shapes them. So thank you so much for organizing this particular session, and I'm truly humbled to be one of the moderators for the day. With me is Siombua, and we can give Siombua an opportunity to say hello. She's Siombua, where are you? If you can just say hello where you are. All right, not able to get hold of her.
Hello.
Hi,
hello,
Siombua.
Harriet. Hi, can you hear me? Can everyone get me?
We can't see you, Siombua.
Okay. Hi.
That's better.
Yes, that's much better. So my name is
Welcome.
Winnie Siombua, and I'm glad to be one of the co-moderators for today's webinar. And I'd really like to thank everyone for taking the time to come and join us in celebrating a man who was great, not only for the people of Kibra, but also for the nation of Kenya. I want to believe that his work as a legislator touched everybody, every Kenyan positively, and has impacted and continues to impact on them up to this day. So I hope we can be able to, I hope that through today's webinar, we'll be able to do justice to his memory.
All right. Thank you very much, Siombua. Just a few housekeeping rules. We can have all our mics off. We can also raise our hands if we want to raise any issues or to put across any questions. If you're within the hall or a group of people within the same setup, to avoid echoes, we could kindly minimize the volume of our machines so that we can avoid the echoes. I also propose that we run through the program, and then if we have any questions or concerns, we'll have a session for that. So with our program before us, I think we are a few minutes late. I would wish to thank all the speakers who are currently on board. Thank you very much for accepting to be here with us today. And because of time, maybe we could just run through the program for the day. We'll have opening remarks from George Kegoro, Executive Director, Kenya Human Rights Commission. We shall also have panel discussions from Agrippina Amatemo Oluoch. We shall then have an interlude video, which will take about 10 to 15 minutes. We will also have the second session whereby we will have Senior Counsel Patricia Nyaundi, who will take us, who's the board member, Center for Community Development. We'll then have Senior Counsel Firoz Noroji give us the keynote speech. We'll then have a question and answers session. We can float them at that particular time. We'll then have closing remarks by the panelists. We'll then close this particular session with a vote of thanks from Honorable Imran Okoth. And with that, allow me to just put across to say this, that leadership in many cases is led by passion. We have very few leaders who take the mantra with a lot of passion. And one of them was Ken Okoth, because when I read the many write-ups by his friends, one thing that comes across is that Ken embodied human rights in his heart. He was a leader who took his leadership priorities with a lot of zeal and excellence. He had a personalized touch in everything that he took and everything that he handled. And it's with that that we say, when you have leaders who leave a mark in our hearts, it is paramount that we always remember them. It is paramount that we bring the next generation to emulate some of those tenets of good leadership and governance. Human rights is one key thing that we need to entrench within our institutions, both within the business setup and currently the current discussions about amendment of the Constitution 10 years down the line is one of those discussions that we need proper guidance, proper leadership to champion this particular discussion. And I'm truly honored to be one of the moderators today. And it is also paramount to take note of some of the pluses that Ken Okoth put in place. And those are the particular statutes that he championed for. And you can see one of them is protection against domestic violence. As we speak right now, domestic violence is actually at its peak. There's also the Prevention of Torture Act, a document that if we adapt and work with, it's a document that we need to really, really run with. And then we have the National Coroner Services Act. It has come to place. Whether it's being realized is something that we need to have that discussion. So because of time, allow me to bring on board our George Kegoro, the Executive Director, Kenya Human Rights Commission, to give his opening remarks. Welcome, George. Can anyone hear me?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you.
All right,
Hello?
thank you. Hello, could we kindly have George Kigoro to give the opening remarks?
Hello, Harriet.
Yes, Davis, kindly proceed.
Okay. Thank you, members. Mrs. Monica Okoth, the wife to our departed comrade, friends, relatives, comrades, and members of the Center for Community Development and Human Rights. Welcome to this memorial lecture, which is very timely as we remember the life of our brother, and also as we commemorate the 10 years after we got the new constitution. To many people, Ken Okoth was a comrade, a servant leader, a human rights defender, and also a friend. Although he was a member of parliament for Kibra, he had very good engagements with members of the human rights movement. And in the process, we handled so many issues with him relating to advanced constitutionalism, good governance, rule of law, human rights, among others. And at the level of KHRC, we were able to have very close engagement. One member of parliament who knew most of our staff members by names. And whenever he came at KHRC, he was like a person who was at his own house. He could make any request and any demand around the people he used to serve at Kibra and also the nation at large. And he's also one of the MPs who was involved in a demonstration with us. And in the process, imagine, he went to wait for us at Parliament buildings to receive the petition we were about to submit. So that is extremely exemplary and very unique. And it's no wonder then when he was promoted to glory, the sector converged and organized in a big way to celebrate and remember his life, which climax with the event we hosted at Freedom Corner. And I remember as we were planning all these things, we said every year we are going to have annual events to remember this great leader of this country. And it is in this context, this lecture is happening, which is actually a moment to reflect about the gains and the challenges of the new constitution, and also to look at the life of our brother. I can say Ken was so phenomenal to the extent that he's the only personality who is being remembered as we commemorate the Constitution of Kenya. Because KJC has been involved in so many webinars and in so many activities around the Constitution, and most of those discussions have been very topical and thematic by nature. But this one is dedicated to a person who was a great leader in this country, and is also the only person and leader in this country whose character is being directly benchmarked against the Constitution of Kenya. That confirms that he was a very unique and a very special person. Last year, when we were remembering Ken, we tasked ourselves to do a number of tributes. And I had the privilege and honor to do the tribute on behalf of the Kenya Human Rights Commission, which was looking at the element of Ken, the human rights standard leader. And scan through that, because that gave me also an opportunity to give both an institutional and a personal reflection. And when I was doing this, I was forced not just look at Article 10 of the Constitution, which talks about the values and the principles of good governance, but also the Bill of Rights, where human rights is given further definitions and also explanations, and also Article 73 about leadership and integrity, which also adds more details on what is expected of leadership in this country. So based on this, I focused on two things, which I want to share with us today, because I think part of this were not shared when we had the civic event at Freedom Corner. One is the human rights-based personality. And this is my reflection, that Ken was blessed with a remarkably open and tender heart, humble and contrite spirit that loved and cared about humankind with so much intensity. Because personally, I was wondering what made Ken so different and so passionate in the way he supports people who are always in need. And therefore, that aspect of humility and the contrite spirit is something actually I borrowed from the Bible, Psalms chapter 51. It's no wonder that he strongly believed in and remained so committed in preserving the dignity of individuals and communities, and to promote social justice and the realization of the potential for human beings. And this is borrowed from Article 19 of the Constitution, which is about what is the purpose of the Bill of Rights. So this is what Ken was about. And therefore, in that process, he went out of his way to provide for and address partner needs of the poor, irrespective of their affiliations and connections. He remains the source of empowerment, inspiration, and advocacy on issues affecting the most disadvantaged and other vulnerable groups in the society. And he was always approachable and accessible as he interacted and related with all manner of people, irrespective of barriers whatsoever. We shall forever remember him for the way he used also his personal and individual spaces and resources to advance the agenda for good governance and also justice and human rights in the country. That is the element of human rights personality. There was something else I also looked at, the human rights standard leadership. What does it mean? Because in Article 73, we have so many provisions and variables, which sometimes look like they are very difficult to interpret when it comes to interpret and apply when it comes to leadership in this country. And this is my finding, that Ken was truly a Democrat with a transformative political course and conscience that enabled him to serve people with incredible humility, integrity, and dedication. It is no wonder he went out of his way again to work on a broad range of human rights and governance issues across sectors, established social, professional, and political connections with human rights workers and movements, Imagine Ken was one of the few leaders who was so connected and so involved in the work we used to do. And he also used to build so many alliances around the different issues we used to work on. So to me, as we talk about the gains meant with respect to the Constitution of Kenya, I can say without any fear of contradiction that it is possible to have leaders who are committed to the elements of the Constitution of Kenya. And it's also possible for our current leadership to comply with the provisions of the Constitution of Kenya without necessarily going through amendments. All we need is a human rights centered personality. And out of that, we'll get the leadership, which is envisaged in Article 10 of the Constitution of Kenya. To this extent, I welcome all of us to this annual lecture. And this is also going to set a stage for further conversations and also future lectures, which we hope they are going to be happening on an annual basis. And the KHRC is very much committed to be part of this future engagements. Kindly accept apologies from George Kegoro, our executive director. He is running late, and I hope he's going to join us as we continue with the conversations. Karibuni sana na asante sana.
Thank you very much, Davis Malombe. From your presentation, it is in no doubt that Ken was an institute leader who worked very closely with the human rights institutions and the civil society at large. Members, we are using the hashtag Katiba at 10. Let us keep tweeting so that we can have the general public going on. Before we move on to the next session, I'm told we are, with us is Fiona Okoth, the wife to the late Ken Okoth, and would love her to give us a few remarks before we go to the next program. Thank you very much. Welcome on board, Fiona.
Monica.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you so much for everybody who's taken the time to log in and to listen to the lecture. I'm seated here at Kibera Secondary School, and I had not seen it in a very long time. Ken had started this project, I think in 2017, and it's absolutely amazing. I'm told it's only a few weeks away from opening, or at least not physically opening, but being ready. So it's a wonderful project. Congratulations to the CDF office. And so it's wonderful to listen to all your memories and all your comments about Ken and his lovely work that he did over the years. It would have meant a lot to him, and thank you so much for everything and remembering him. Everybody remembers him in a different way. And I'm truly honored for all the support that I've been given over this past year. People are continuously talking about him and remembering him in different ways. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Monica, for that. We will then move to the next session, where we can welcome on board our first panelist. That's Agrippina Amatemo Onwatch. Agrippina will focus on how Ken Okoth impacted her life through the scholarship programs that he had founded, the Children of Kibera. Through the program, the students got scholarship through high school and college and were linked to other mentors and were taught life skills such as personal branding, job search. They also got linked to other people from Kibera who had succeeded in life in the interest of influencing the narrative of Kibera kids. Welcome on board, Agrippina.
Thank you very much, Harriet, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm humbled to be here this afternoon. I met Ken Okoth in 2008 when he came to our school to tell us more about his scholarship that he had started just an year before. It was called Children of Kibera Foundation. We applied, a number of us, and 2009, I was among the lucky few who are able to get the scholarship to pay for my secondary education together with other 9 students. And through that, Ken ensured that our school fees was paid on time. He came to our school visits personally, and he was very much involved in our grades. He was not just there to pay our school fees, but made sure that we had good grades, and he followed up on each one of us and how we were performing. During school holidays, he ensured that we had life skill sessions that helped us, such as CV writing and how to communicate well with people, how to brand ourselves out here so that we are able to be noticed. Ken Okoth made sure that we had shopping to go back to school with. And for that, he gave us a different power when we come out here, because education is the key to most people who live in places like Kibra, where poverty is so much encroached there. So for us, for him to pay our school fees was such a very powerful tool he gave to us, because someone like me, if I did not meet Ken Okoth, then my parents were not able to afford the school fees. But because I met Ken and he was able to pay my school fees, that is what is pushing me to be where I am today. Ken Okoth made sure that our career developments were in line, and we had mentors assigned to all of us. And that was a good thing, because we had someone who have lived through Kibra and were in somewhere else. So it is easy if someone tells me, there is life outside Kibra. So for me, it was very easy to connect with people who have already lived through Kibra and who are doing well. So for us, we saw that like a different step that we looked forward to. Apart from education, we knew that we looked forward to living a different life. So that is one thing that Ken Okoth helped us with. In the CDF management, I benefited from the bursaries, and what I can say it was very much transparent. As long as you applied on time and all your documents were correct, you would have not missed that bursary. So for me, Ken Okoth was a leader. He was a true leader. He had so much integrity, and he wanted better for the community of Kibra. He wanted better for the children of Kibra, and he gave us a different human dignity that we didn't have before. So every time I sit down and reflect on the good work he did with the children of Kibra, because he helped over 60 of us access education, and not just education, quality education, because most of us were able to access national schools, provincial schools that had quality education that we needed. And right now, in the Children of Kibera Foundation scholars, we have doctors, we have engineers, we have economists, we have social workers. That is something that cannot be taken from us. And that is something that a gift that Ken Okoth gave us, that we are happy we met him. We are happy that we were able to interact with him, and he tapped some of those things to us. And this afternoon, when I look back, Ken never wanted us to settle for less. Anytime you will come back from school with an A minus, he wanted an A from you. He wanted to push you to do better in life. He never settled. You'll tell him, Ken, I've graduated. He's like, no, you need to look to this master's scholarship. You need to look to this job application. He always pushed us to be better every day, and he never wanted us to settle for anything less than what we deserve. So this afternoon, I'm very humbled to have met such an honorable leader, a leader who not only wanted us to be like him, but he wanted us to even do more than what he had done. And I am very much humbled to have come across Ken Okoth, and he changed my life and the life of other children of Kibera scholars to a very great extent.
Thank you very much, Agrippina. That is very encouraging. It is also encouraging to note that you're still carrying the banner and the wishes and will of Honorable Ken Okoth. Ours is to encourage you to keep up the good work. They normally say, if you help one soul, you've helped the whole community. So we are also looking up to you to shape our thinking and to shape us in terms of how can we then carry this community forward as we come together to commemorate a great leader. The next session, I want to bring on board my co-moderator, Winnie Siombua. Winnie is the Executive Director at the Center for Community Development and Human Rights, an organization founded by the late Honorable Ken Okoth. She's also a policy governance and human rights consultant who works with institutions and individuals to provide cutting-edge solutions to policy, democracy, governance, human rights challenges in Africa and beyond. Welcome on board, Winnie, to take us through the next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harriet, for this opportunity. I'm right now at the Kibera Primary School where a screening of today's session is happening. And the majority of participants we have here in Kibera are persons who were impacted directly by the late Honorable Ken Okoth as a member of parliament and as a person who had an interest in their well-being. So I think one of the things that we are currently discussing in Kibera through the Center for Community Development and Human Rights is development and leadership and governance that is definitely oriented within the ambit of Article 10 leadership. And I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Ms. Patricia Nyaundi, who is also the board member for the Center for Community Development and Human Rights. And that's an organization that was set up by Ken Okoth as one of the things that he thought or one of the vehicles that he thought would help him in delivering on his mandate, both as a national leader and as a community leader. So Patricia, I take this opportunity to welcome you so you can speak a bit about the Center for Community Development and Human Rights and what that meant for Ken Okoth and what it still continues to do for the people of Kibra and the nation at large. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Winnie. Thank you very much, Kenya Human Rights Commission, for hosting us, and everyone really who has been has come together to enable us have this very important review and reflection on the life of a great leader. I think I would start off by just, acknowledging what Davis said in his remarks, that truly this is the one leader who is being celebrated as the country marks the 10th anniversary of the promulgation of the Constitution in 2010. As Davis said, the late Ken Okoth had, when it came to working on human rights and pulling in people to his initiatives, a sense of entitlement. And this is how he got me involved in the Center for Community Development and Human Rights. He didn't ask me, he just informed me that he had set up the center and that in his grand scheme, he expected me to serve as a board member. I was deeply honored because having worked with Ken Okoth, I had come to appreciate him as a leader who truly espoused the values as articulated in Article 10 of our Constitution. Three things stand out for me in terms of how Ken Okoth appreciated human rights. The first is that human rights, we must always appreciate that they are more than a fine articulation. It's just more than an exercise by wordsmiths. What Ken Okoth, through the establishment of the center, reminds us is that unless you take the next step to move to implement those rights that you have so beautifully articulated in a document, they may as well not exist for the citizenry. And what Ken Okoth articulated very well was that he believed that those rights would serve to enhance the quality of life of the ordinary citizen. That's the second lesson I pick from Ken Okoth, that ultimately the drafters, those who had this vision, expected that these rights that we have articulated so powerfully in Chapter 4 of our Constitution would transform the lives of the ordinary citizen. So that is why you will find that the center is focused on 4 key areas: governance and human rights. Unless you invest in the quality of leadership, you use rights into realities. Community development and empowerment. Ken was a firm believer that you do not need to serve people who are disempowered. I think Ken believed that his role as a leader was really to make sure that his constituents had the tools, had the agency to translate these rights into lived realities. Social cohesion and culture. One of the things that has plagued us as a country has been politics that thrives on dividing us, politics that thrives on emphasizing that which pulls us apart rather than that which draws us together. And therefore, through the center, Ken had a vision of being able to draw the diverse people, first in Kibera and even in the country, so that they would be united around the values of the Constitution and human rights, which entrench the essential and inherent dignity of every citizen. And finally, I think, as Agrippina has articulated very well, Ken was a firm believer, and the center also focuses on quality education. Ken, I believe, through his own experience, had learned firsthand the power of education to transform your life and to transform the community around you. Right now, the center has a number of ongoing activities, a vocational training center that empowers women and girls with tailoring and dressmaking skills. It is also running a program that seeks to combat gender-based violence during COVID. I think we have all been alarmed by the rising incidence of GBV targeting especially young school-going girls. So this program offers coordination for survivors to be able to access support services. The other project that the center is currently running is vocational skills training for vulnerable youth in partnership with AIRD. The fourth project that the center is currently undertaking is what is called the GNUE Business Accelerator Program that focuses on linking young entrepreneurs with microcredit facilities and opportunities to build their business skills. Finally, the center has a project focused on empowering women through the production of face masks in partnership with Uweza Foundation and women. This brings me to the third thing that I learned from the life of Ken Okoth. You always lead from the front. Ken was a man of more action and less words. His actions speak loudly for themselves. I believe this is what the Constitution had in mind. And for the Constitution to be realized, we really need leaders of the caliber of Ken Okoth, leaders who are prepared to get their hands dirty, leaders who have at the very core of their being a belief in the letter and the spirit of this Constitution. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It was my intention to start my presentation by acknowledging and appreciating the fact that we are joined by Monica Okoth, a lady whom I have come to respect and appreciate for the period that I have interacted with her. So thank you very much once again, Kenya Human Rights Commission and the other really delighted and honored to be a part of this panel.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Thank you very much, Patricia, for your remarks, very beautiful remarks there about what Honorable Ken Okoth has been able to do for the community in Kibera. Now, the next thing that I'd like us to do is I'd like to bring on board Honorable John Wayanjo, who worked very closely with Honorable Ken during the 2013 to 2017 Parliament. They worked together in the national, caucus on the Human Rights Caucus. And Honorable Waiganjo is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, as well as a former member of parliament for the Jororok constituency in Nyandarua County. He was also a member of the Department Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs, where his name is quite synonymous with the Penal Code Amendment Bill and the Criminal Procedures Code Amendment Bill, which sought to abolish the death penalty as a form of punishment in Kenya. He is also a senior partner at JM Waiganjo and Company Advocates and is a commissioner at the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. I want to believe that Honorable Waiganjo has a rich experience in having worked with Honorable Ken as a legislator and as a champion for human rights. So Honorable Waiganjo, kindly do honor us with your remarks regarding this man that we today sit here to honor. Karibu.
Thank you very much. I am honored to join this meeting in memory of the Honorable Ken Okoth. I want to say that I met the Honorable Okoth in the 11th Parliament after the 2013 general elections, representing Kibra then, which was a new constituency. I was equally representing a new constituency, so we had a lot in common. So we created such a good rapport. I came to learn that he was a firm defender of human rights, and not just a human rights practitioner, but a real one, because he pushed through a lot of legislation that created space, democratic space in our country, and also trying to actualize some of the legislation that were proposed or are proposed in the this constitution and had timelines and had not been implemented in parliament or debated and passed as laws. So I know him as a very ardent guy and who would push for results. And he also had a very good political side because he was jovial and can excite crowds. And then he would be across the board. I mean, you know, he's tribe-raised. He was tribe-raised. He visited my constituency many times in Nyandarua County, and that is the time when ODM and Jubilee were not seeing eye to eye. So, but he didn't. That was not a problem to him. And I also visited Kibra a lot of times. And then we came together as a caucus, the Kenya the Parliamentarians Human Rights Caucus, which now me, Ken Okoth, and together with others, Ken Okoth leading us as a main convener of KEFLA, as now we called it, took up a lot of bills that were human rights related, the Anti-Torture Act, for example, the Protection Against Domestic Violence, you know, and a lot more, the Coroner's Bill, those pieces of legislation that would widen the democratic scope and that would help the ordinary Kenyan achieve constitutional rights. So Ken Okoth, I would say, is a person who would require what we are doing today, remembrance and all memories. So I want to thank you know, those who have made this possible, and I want to urge all of us to emulate his zeal in attaining democratic ideals. If Ken Okoth was here today, as we look back at the 10 years of this constitution, I'm sure he would be proud. There are things that has happened that he really pushed for and he was dear to, and also he would have his regrets in the same manner, particularly on the depth of corruption in this country. I think if there is anywhere we have gone at the lowest, it's in that we're thinking corruption now is kawaida, you know, like I would put it. So, I mean, Ken would regret that because that's still there, and I'm sure he would still be fighting corruption. And at the same time, he would be proud of Chapter 4, particularly on some of the provisions that gave people a lot of liberties, including expression. I remember we also allowed access to information. He was very clear on that. And also Article 43 on social and economic rights. We joined together with Loot to Food and other luminaries like Neto Agostino in fatherlands of the democratic space. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Waiganjo. At this point, I'd like us to share in a video interlude, which clearly depicts some of the times and the life of Honorable Ken Okoth. It is quite rich in some of his, you know, some of the comments, or I should call them the quotes that he shared with us and still continue to inform some of the things that the public engages in remembering him. So, karibuni.
Kibra Member of Parliament, new Kibra Member of Parliament, Kenneth Okoth.
I am not a stranger to the interests and the cries and the pains of the people of this country. When I came in as Member of Parliament in 2013, we identified 7 areas of important things that had to be taken care of in Kibra, including water, youth empowerment, women empowerment, infrastructure like roads, security issues, lighting, access to police services, healthcare issues. And one of the most important that came to the top of the list was access to education. I work very hard to support education for young people. You can, in one lifetime, rise above the status you found your parents in through education, through structured opportunities. I rise to second and support this bill. This bill is very important. A 2/3 gender rule. There is a constitutional requirement that all elected bodies be no more than 2/3 of one gender. Right now, our National Assembly in Parliament is not 2/3. We are bringing in a constitutional amendment and a formula in which we will have a popular initiative to go to the counties and ask the members of the county assemblies, and we will collect 1 million signatures to ask Kenyan citizens to allow us to amend the constitution to put in a new formula that will allow us to always elect 145 women, and 290 seats. We want to send a message asking the police to stop the killings and to make sure that the Kenyans' rights to protest are protected and respected.
You have done exemplary work in Kibra.
Tupunguze ufisadi. Bajeti ya ufisadi kwa nchi hii iko juu sana, ipunguzwe, inaumiza Wakenya wote, sehemu zote za nchi yetu. We must reduce those. My message to the young people is, it doesn't matter very much where you come from. Do your best, never give up.
You have done exemplary work in Kibra.
Indeed, that clip clearly depicts Honorable Ken as an exemplary leader. I think some of the issues he's talking about are issues that still dog us today. Access to education. We hear him speak about the integrity of the Constitution, gender justice, an end to extrajudicial killings, the respect of human rights, corruption. Those are issues that we are still struggling with currently as a nation. And I think it goes on to bring us or usher us on to the next chapter of the webinar, where we will be looking at him as a leader who personified the constitutional Article 10 provisions. So I'd like to bring in Harriet Chigai, my co-moderator, again to introduce our keynote speaker and tell us on the next steps that we shall take moving forward. Harriet.
Thank you very much, Winnie. Members, our hashtag is Remembering Ken Okoth. Hashtag Remembering Ken Okoth. It is in no doubt from what has been said already that we had a remarkable leader in Ken Okoth. And it's for that reason that his work still is entrenched within our spaces and well engraved within our hearts. And it is for that reason, especially when it comes to constitutional matters. And right now, as we speak, we have a leadership that has continuously refused to honor the rule of law and constitutionalism in this country. And there can be no other better person to bring us to speed where we have come from, where we are at, and where we need to go in terms of holding human rights at a very high pedestal and upholding the rule of law and constitution. Us is Senior Counsel Firoz Noraji, a leading human rights lawyer, a poet, a writer, who over many decades has been very influential in part of the political and social movement for constitutional and social change in Kenya. He has served as a senior counsel and barrister at Lincoln's Inn, won the International Bar Association Bernard Simon's Human Rights Prize in the year 2002-2004, and was inducted to the Roll of Honor at the Law Society of Kenya in 2005. Welcome, Firoz Noraji.
Thank you.
It seems we are having a technical hitch on Council Feroz's side. I think as we wait for him to get ready, we can take a number of questions from the audience here in Kibera. The questions will be packed for answering afterwards. So let me see. I think, Madina, you can help us with passing the mic to the members of the audience. or a comment. You can give us a question or a comment, anything you remember Honorable Ken Okoth by, what he taught you, what he left you with that was so remarkable that you still live by up until now as a member of parliament for your constituency, as your leader locally.
Good afternoon to you all.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mr. Daniel Owino. I was the driver to the late Honorable Ken Okoth. I can say that I was very proud to work with the Honorable Ken Okoth because he always instilled some discipline in us and always advised us that whenever you go to a place like a forum or a meeting like this, you make sure that you come out with something. Maybe you meet new guys, new people, you get their contacts so that maybe you could, it could be of use to you in the future. He believed in being thorough. He was a perfectionist. And I think that made him go places. There's no place that I was ever sent by Honorable Ken Okoth where I was turned down. I was always welcome. The minute you mentioned the name, things could just change and work out the way you wanted. Thanks for that.
Another comment?
Thank you so much. One thing that I learned is that Ken affirmed to us that when a leadership is localized, you can really tap into the opportunities that comes with it. And that is clearly evident in one is ability to work with local people in order to put up, structures like the education, the schools that we have. The number of schools that were put in place also created opportunities for others. And basically, I also learned that opportunity is not rare, but opportunity is sweet when it is utilized, something that our MP did. And I'm also beneficiary of his leadership in 3 ways. One, I got the bursary, to go to campus. Number 2, I was given an opportunity to work in one of the committees that basically proposed this school that we are into. And that's why I couldn't miss this. Because I remember our first meeting, we proposed that we will have school in Kibera, a secondary school in Kibera Primary School. And since he was passionate about education, we can see the fruits even here where I am. The third thing is that he also gave talent an opportunity, and we remember very well, we used to have, we still have the annual music, festival where the local schools were given an opportunity to grow and showcase their talents. My question is, will we set up something that another generation will come to learn about Ken Okoth? Because we want to raise a generation that you can be born in Kibra, brought up in Kibra, school in Kibra, and have an opportunity to lead your people. And that can only have or be realized by having a symbol that whenever you look at it, you reflect at it, you remember that I am learning so that I can be able to bring a change in my community. So if you can have a symbol, a memo, something, even if it's a school for leadership within Kibra, but that can raise another generation of leaders from Kibra, not from without. From without, we count it as an added advantage. But from Kibra, we count it as our prime advantage. Thank you.
Thank you very
Good afternoon.
much. That is a clear.
My name is Kevin Otieno, and I'm a beneficiary. I was a student at that time, and I remember lacking school fees at some point, and I went to Okoth and actually managed to get a bursary. And I remember Okoth valuing talent. I'm also an artist. I remember performing in most of these events. I performed, and they actually value talent, and I pray that the government at the leadership can continue with the spirit. And the question I would like to ask is, we as artists, we have been pursuing for the what can you say, the whole, yeah. So yeah, exactly, yeah. And we have been pursuing for it for a very long time. So I don't know what are we doing for that to come for us, we as an artist.
Harriet, can you get me?
Yes, thank you very much. Those are very good comments coming from members within Kibera. One good thing that has come out, or one challenge that has been thrown, is whether there shall be set up anything or a monument or any activity or even a school of leadership to commemorate Ken Okoth. There's also the call from artists that what they need is a hall where they can continue with their work in remembrance of Ken Okoth. Thank you very much. There's also Lorraine Atieno. Lorraine Atieno is saying, I hope Lorraine Atieno is saying, I hope his dream of empowering the less fortunate children with the key of education will not stop. So what Lorraine is telling us is that we need to emulate Ken Okoth and continue with his dream. I am informed that Senior Firoz Noroji is now back. Senior Firoz Noroji, welcome back. We will then move to the next session and allow you to take us through your session. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet. Madam Moderators, Mrs. Monica Okoth, Honorable Imran Okoth, Honorable John Waiganjo, Honorable members of KEFRA, the KHRC, and the Center for Community Development, friends and friends of freedom. How do we follow Ken Okoth? How do we follow human rights-centered leadership? To follow these fruitfully, Kenya's history offers us two tasks. One, to ensure the continuity of ideals. And two, to ensure the continuity of persistence. The continuity of ideals, we must, to turn to that, to do this, we must clearly identify our ideals to ourselves. First, our personal ideals. Secondly, the ideals of our... Hello, Harriet, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. We can hear you.
Thank you. To do this, we clearly identify our ideals to ourselves. Firstly, our personal ideals. Secondly, the ideals of our work. And thirdly, the national ideals. We must study the history of our ideals in Kenya, and because ideals are shared all over the world, the ideals argumentation and the struggles for ideals everywhere else as well. We study those because ideals everywhere inspire us, whether they are the ideals of the mothers of our political prisoners at Freedom Corner and of RPP everywhere, or the ideals at Sharpeville in South Africa, or the ideals of those on the bridge at Selma in Alabama. So we look back and ask ourselves, what does our past say about dignity in Kenya, about the rule of law in Kenya, about freedom in Kenya, and about Article 10 in Kenya before Article 10? One of the most important changes that Art 2010 brought about is to place social justice in the middle of our constitution. Kenya's constitution is a human rights-based approach. And in the preamble, we come across social justice. It says, we the people of Kenya, recognizing the aspirations of all Kenyans for a government based on the essential values of human rights, equality, freedom, democracy, social justice, and the rule of law. And you can see that all of these are our national ideals. But the Constitution places them on an even higher value when it mentions them in Article 10. In Article 10(2)(b), it indicates that the national values and principles of governance include B, human dignity, equity, again, social justice, inclusiveness, human dignity, equality, non-discrimination, and the protection of the marginalized. Now, what we are doing here is moving them from ideals, national values, and then into principles of governance. So we see that the Constitution has gone a long way, and we have work to do, as our previous speakers have mentioned, but we have got a basis that is far ahead of almost any other constitution in the world, and certainly far ahead of what we had struggled for and obtained in 1963. Similarly, when we look at Article 19, we see in Article 19 itself the purpose of the rights and freedoms in Chapter 4. We see one of the purposes is to promote social justice. And this is an important foundation for us. But as again, other speakers have pointed out, we are not only talking about the statement of these things, but as Patricia pointed out, we move from that to action. And so we move from idealism into action. And if I may go one step further, we see how do we move into action? And we say that idealism has to be supported by knowledge. We must know our own history. We must know what are the building blocks by which those ideals can be translated into reality. And it's not only knowledge, it is also about judgment. We must have judgment about how we go about our actions and how we go about translating these ideals into reality. And we need knowledge because we draw upon past struggles in our present struggles. So in Kenya, we will look at the independence struggle from 1895 to 1963. And we will look at the struggles of the second liberation from 1964 to 2010 and after that. Not only knowledge, not only judgment, but responsibility. We have to be conscious of our responsibility to carry gains forward, to push for new gains so that we secure all gains, and to keep demanding them to bring the Constitution to court all the time, to create not only the opportunity to release a sense of injustice, but to turn that into an opportunity for translating ideals into law, enforceable law. Now, will we gain them? Will we gain these ideals? And history tells us sometimes, more often than we think though, but our duty is more measured. And I'll come to that duty in a very short time. Central to the continuity of our ideals are two things. One is the Constitution that we have won and memory and of our past and of our past struggles and the importance of not forgetting that. Why the Constitution? Because as we have seen, the national ideals are set out in all this. Now, when you read those, you will find that our national ideals, our work ideals, and our personal ideals heavily overlap. And that is why we are in the work that we do in respect of these ideals and these human rights. In relation to this, one of the great, I turn then to the second aspect, which is of memory. Why do we need memory? Because there is a great danger which we must always keep in mind, and it is one that affects every part of the struggle. It is what James Mustich has observed. Moral courage, and I quote, moral courage withers without memory, and forgetting is the handmaid of evil. It is therefore one of the most important considerations that we never allow forgetting to take place, that we are always speaking up, that we are always holding up these ideals. And we need courage for that. And we cannot restore our societies to what we aspire without the nurturing of moral courage within them. And we cannot do that without nurturing and drawing upon our own heritage, the heritage of the struggle. And we must remind ourselves, we in Kenya and we on our continent are not strangers to struggle against oppression. We are not strangers to the organization of resistance to oppression. And the struggles for independence are deeply embodied demands. They are the demands for human dignity and the values of inclusiveness and tolerance. For long, we had not drawn enough on this heritage, but we took a great step forward in 2010, where it is now part of the basic law of our country. So our history is critical in the maintenance of memory. It is critical in the maintenance of fair and just societies. because that history is a very practical assistance in resisting fresh oppression and unjust regimes. Oppression is just a word for widespread and continuous violations of human rights. And in resisting new violations, our history has concrete uses. It assures us that self-respect and dignity are possible even in periods of great oppression, and therefore that the efforts to retain them are not a futile exercise in the face of overwhelming power. Secondly, our heritage demonstrates the vulnerability of tyranny. It is important to realize that history shows us that oppression is seldom totally monolith, that oppression itself is divided, much as, unfortunately, the forces of progress are often divided. And thirdly, our past is an example, a support for work against oppression. And these are the very strengths we need as citizens and as lawyers to challenge unjust rule and the breakdown of the rule of law. In respect of this, then, the ideals that are there are part of our work, and without memory, our ideals fade away into corruption, as we are seeing, into political oppression, not necessarily visible but present, and an unjust social order. You may ask, what are my ideals? My ideals were spoken by Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, and he was asked what he was interviewed by a French freedom fighter, André Maurois, writer, freedom fighter, resistance leader. And he asked Nehru, he said, what has been the most difficult task that you have faced as Prime Minister? And Nehru said, to build a just nation by just means. And that is my personal set of ideals. I turn then to the second continuity that, that history offers us, and that is the continuity of persistence. It sounds tautologous. It is meant to, because it reminds us, the continuity of persistence reminds us that ordinary persistence is not enough in the task of justice. In that task, we need persistent persistence. Not only is political change fraught with opposition from vested interests, we have only to look at the independence struggle to see how many people suffered torture and death and displacement and maiming. We have the second example of the second liberation, where people suffered death and displacement and deprivation. All these political change brings in front of us. But all social change, especially in the minds of people, is a slow process. So be patient. I will give you some examples. In Kenya, the example of the presidential election petitions. The first presidential election petition was filed in 1992's general election. And we knew that it would be thrown out. We knew that the judiciary was compliant. But there was a step to be gained first, and that is to break in the minds of people the thought that you can never sue the president. The thought that even if you sued, you can never make a point there. But we nevertheless brought that presidential election. When was the first presidential election successful? In November 2017. That is exactly 25 years later. And I will give you a small nudge of the point by saying that in the 1992-93 election petition, there were 3 lawyers there who also were present in 2017. So James Orengo, Paul Mwangi, and myself were there 25 years later. And it is an example of patience. And that is something you must carry with you. Another example is the South African freedom struggle. That struggle from 1948, if not much earlier, but 1948 is the year in which the Boer apartheid party, nationalist party, came into power, and right up to 1994. So we are looking at close to 46 years or 44 years. And the same people who were struggling in 1948, including Walter Sisulu, including Nelson Mandela, were there in 1994 as well. You look at the struggle of Brown and Board of Education for removing the question of separate but equal facilities in the American South. That continued from 1919 onwards to 1954. And the same lawyers who were there in 1933 with the very first case were there in 1954, Thurgood Marshall, White, others. And so this is study how this patience has to be dealt with. How can we prevent patience from turning into loss of momentum? How do we prevent patience from turning into indifference? You do it by considering what your strategy is, step by step. Do you go for it all at once? Can you? Did we expect to do that in 1992-93 with the election petition? And if not, what were we gaining? What could we use in 1993, again in 97, in 1983, 1989, 88, 89, and so on? And what we were doing in that period is also changing the minds of people. People do not accept. All peaceful change is a slow process and a process which attracts resistance, because all social change is disruptive, even for a good purpose. And so use that time to change minds and to make people who are doubting or resisting into questioning, be persuasive. And so the steps that you take are accompanied by persuasion in this process. So what is our individual role in these long struggles? If Mandela had not lived to 1994, he would not be the single symbol in the manner that he was. But that is not why Mandela fought for these things. And so it was another South African, Robert Sobukwe, who was the president of the Pan-African Congress, not the African National Congress. He too was a lawyer, and he spent 6 years in Robben Island. And in the weeks after Sharpeville in 1960, Sobukwe was charged with incitement. And in the mitigation speech, this is what he said. The history of the human race has been a struggle for the removal of oppression. And we would have failed had we not made our contribution. We are glad we made it. He didn't say, I'm glad we won, because he hadn't. He died in 1978, long before South Africa was freed. But he was making a point that our duty, we would love to win, and we will work to win, but our duty is to make our contribution. And the sum of these contributions is a huge force. And that is what we will consider our duty. And these words also remind us that the correction of injustice is not an event. Peaceful social change is not an event, it's a process. And it's mostly a very long process. And these words such as these, help us persevere in that long task, even when we sometimes think we will not succeed, or we will not live to see success. And Sobukwe's words reiterate that perseverance is the duty of all persons fighting for human rights and against injustice of any kind. What happens when we can't see the results? When we get discouraged by the length of time, when we get discouraged by our friends, we thought, defecting? What happens when there are overwhelming odds against us? What happens when we feel unable to get change? The duty remains, the same duty. And let me give you another memorable exchange on this. By the year 2000, the second liberation struggle against oppression and the denial of liberty and the rule of law in Kenya was in its 22nd year. That compares with the 30th and 40th year in South Africa. But it was our 22nd year, and it was discouraging. While I was abroad for a brief respite, I met Albie Sachs, the ANC freedom fighter, lawyer, and writer. And by then, South Africa, since 1994, had been free. And he was a judge of the Constitutional Court. But we had been colleagues teaching at the university, teaching together at the University of Dar es Salaam 30 years earlier. So I asked him, I said, how did you deal with all this? We have no major parties such as the ANC. We are individuals, we are divided. Should I consider stopping? He thought, and then he said, do you think you are doing right? I shrugged and I said, yeah. He answered, then what reason is there to stop? And with that, I returned home, refreshed. Individuals get tired, right does not. And our task, as Sobukwe pointed out, is to pursue it till it is reestablished. And that is what ideals and the past does for us. It restores us. other tasks in this persistence to help the persistence continue. We must remember who is to benefit by our struggle. And the short answer, as Ken Okoth lived, was others. Not oneself, not even with the continuous examples to the contrary that we see all around us. We constantly remind ourselves that it is others who are to benefit by our struggle. So do that struggle well. And what do we mean by doing that struggle well? I mean that you cannot do it sloppily. Whatever your work is, teacher, this, that, and the other, it must be done to the utmost excellence that you can do it. You must be the best teachers in Kibra because you are impacting on the life of every single young child in front of you. And particularly in primary schools, nobody has ever forgets at least one primary school teacher who is the making of her or him. And in secondary school, we begin to be impacted by the inspiration of good literature, good action, and that is conveyed through being an excellent teacher. If you are a builder, don't build taka-taka stuff in Kibra. You must build something that will last. And last so that those children are never impacted negatively. If you're a lawyer, don't push in documents that can be thrown out immediately because they're flawed documents. No, your work of all sorts must be excellent to the best. You must plan your work. The Brown and Board of Education process, you must get hold of that and read it because the lawyers sat down and step by step, they filed cases because in the South, a Black student in a law school was not allowed to sit in the same classroom while the professor or lecturer was teaching. So they won the right for Black students to sit outside at the door listening into that class. That was a strategic step because they used it to show the non-usefulness that it was not capable of saying good, separate, can be equal or anything. So strategically approaching your work, planning how to go forward and using that small step forward to gain into the next step, till finally in the board, into Brown and Board of Education, the formal normative structure of race domination collapsed and began a change. Did it bring about a change immediately? You have only to look at the television screens of last week. No. It shows you yet another example of how much time it takes and how much opposition there is to these words that are in Article 10, and how much responsibility is on us if we support them not to give up at any stage. Allied to this is judgment. Your experience is not only to write a good lesson in class or a good could petition in the courts for human rights. It is judgment. It is to see what will work in the courts, what works with these children, what is the best way we can raise funds, what support can we get, and look at what Ken was doing, taking every single opportunity to advance strategically, patiently, with good judgment to move forward. And then you are touching the lives of first a few, then hundreds, then thousands, and we know touching the lives of millions. Another major step, you must read and write as much as you can. This is not about, quote unquote, the part of education that we all love. Reading is ammunition. It is ammunition on your part because you can cite what was achieved in South Africa by Gandhi or by Martin Luther King in Washington or in Memphis. It is what you can gain about people marching in Belarus. All of these is information which you will use at some time. And you write. You get inspiration from reading, and writing is clarification of your mind. It is strategizing with clarity on paper first, and then in action later. These are the greatest weapons that oppressors have used against us. It is not a mistake that it was an offense in the American South for slaves to learn to read, not even read, to learn to read. It was an offense to be found reading, and they were flogged. It is not an accident that the first lawyer qualified in Kenya was in 1952 when Arguing Skodak came from abroad back. And the British colonial rule had started in 1895. So it is 55 years after that this was allowed. It is no accident that there were no scholarships given for law by the Kenyan government, ever. It is no accident that there was no school of law in Kenya till 1970. And no accident that the first school of law in East Africa was in 1960. Because reading and writing is ammunition against oppression, not just colonial oppression, domestic oppression, any oppression, anywhere. And so in Kibra, let there be libraries and libraries and libraries. They can be virtual, they can be actual, but every generation, every new entry in Standard 1 coming into Kibra Primary or into Kibra's educational system is going to need that ammunition, and that ammunition has to be available to that child. And the habit of reading that you inculcate by this, the opportunity for that ammunition to be available to a child in Standard 1, 2, and you are imparting how can this young mind use this ammunition is what education is about. And then finally, it is an important task for us. It's hard work. I know all of you are doing hard work. Try and analyze what Ken's 24 hours looked like. And I think you will find that the amount of work was in double figures, and the time that he slept was in a single digit figure. And so, a final warning, ideals are not enough. Ideals alone do not bring change, but without ideals, no change comes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Firoz. For sure, we can never have enough of you. You've just ended when we were in the space that we are yearning to even hear more, you know. So thank you very much, Firoz. It is truly humbling that you always give your time for us. You are always ready to give us the opportunity to listen to your wisdom. And that alone, we can never be thankful enough. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the next session of Q&A. As we had agreed, let us ask questions and direct them to a particular panelist. If the question you want it to be answered by Firoz, feel free to do that. If you want the said question to be answered by Senior Counsel Patricia Nyaundi, please do that. And then we also have still our panelists on board, Honorable John Waiganjo. Please feel free to ask the questions directly. Just a quick reflection. It is in no doubt that Ken Okoth was not only a brilliant servant leader, as demonstrated by those who had the opportunity to rub shoulders with him. Patricia Nyaundi has given a clear indication of who he really was, his work, his passion. We've listened from Agrippine, who's a hands-on example of Ken Okoth's work. His beautiful wife, Monica, thank you very much for being here with us and always giving your time to share and to keep the spirit of Ken Okoth burning. And to Firoz Noroji for reminding us that without ideals, there's really nothing much we can do. And you've also told us that ideals are not enough. What a danger zone to be at. The question then that you have made up walk out with, and something that we have to keep remembering and asking ourselves, why then do we have Kenyans with no courage in terms of upholding the rule of law and constitutionalism? The moral depiction of courage is really, really entrenched within the nature and the environment that we are at. And it's interesting because as we speak right now, we are within the sphere of discussing the amendments of the new constitution. And this is a debate that we as Kenyans, we need to have, because it depicts the role that we have as Kenyans ourselves. And that is where our courage comes in. Are we courageous enough to tackle the issues that are currently affecting us, the issues that are touching on us? And let us look at 10, 15 years from now. What kind of legacy are we leaving behind? Can we have a fair and just society? There is a perfect question. But the question then we want to go away with is, who is the society and who can actually carry this mantle and create the fair space and justice within this society? We as Kenyans normally sit on one side and throw it to the civil society, or throw it to the other people seated on the other side, our leaders, hoping that even when we elect these leaders, they are going to carry our ideals, our passions, our needs, and deliver onto them. But one thing we always fail to do is keep the focus and to keep them in check. So are we courageous enough to hold that banner? As Kenyans, what we have also taken from Firoz, we must embrace self-respect and dignity. When we talk about self-respect and dignity, to what extent, to what levels? What are we doing right now to uphold the ethics and ethos and as enshrined within the Constitution, which is human rights based. What are our ideals as Kenyans when it comes to leadership? When we call upon our leaders to deliver, and when we point fingers at our leaders, the question that we must ask ourselves, we as Kenyans, we put the leadership in office. The question then is, are we reflection of our leaders? Good questions that I think we should carry with ourselves. We can answer them and we can throw them on the other side. It is also important to note that good leadership is passion-driven. It is selfless. We must emulate the tenets of good governance, and those are the lessons that we are carrying today from Firoz and the team and the panelists who have taken their time to share with us and educate us some more. With that, let me check and see what other questions do we have. We have Livingston Nyando who's saying, how will the CSOs ensure that for future elections, we have people like Ken being elected? I would wish to point that question to Honorable George to give us an answer to that. And all the other panelists can also delve in. And then the other question that I would wish to pose, Firoz, this comes to you. We are in an interesting time, where we have leaders completely disregarding the rule of law, leaders who are shrouded within self-aggradation and self-realization, failing to realize the reason as to why they were put in office. The question then is it too late for Kenyans to salvage their current position? Is there hope for the future generations? Let us take the question to George and then Firoz. Is George with us? All right, George is not with us. Firoz, can we take your question? Hello?
Hi, Firoz. Kindly unmute your microphone.
With very little technical ability. Repeat the question to me.
Sorry about the hitch. The question to Firoz reads, we are in an interesting time, a time where we have leaders who are completely disregarding the rule of law and constitutionalism, leaders shrouded within self-appraisals and aggradation with complete disregard of the needs of the people who put them in office. The question then is there hope for Kenyans?
Thank you.
Is there anything that the Kenyans can do to change the current situation?
Yes. I think the first thing that we should arm ourselves with is that this is not the first time it's happened in Kenya. It's not the first time that it's happened in different countries. And our duty there is first to make our demands. Don't do it recklessly, do it together. Do it with as many people as we can put together. But it is important to speak up. And it is important to keep speaking up. It is important to assess what can help us. For example, in the independence struggle, the events after the Second World War were showing that colonialism was not sustainable within either economically or ideologically, because the Second World War had been fought on the basis of freedom, And here were these colonies being kept with oppression and so on. So a large part of the work that was done for the cow, for Kenya African Union, was abroad and with help from abroad in terms of publicity. So you begin to see, you are strategically looking at what is the weakness of the current people who think for themselves. One of them is the increasing publicity of the corruption itself. Secondly, the exposure in respect of individual actions. So these have to be pushed forward, these have to be spread out. It is, so look for the weaknesses and begin to get the strengths put together. There is no thought, each generation finds the people in the forests, in the independence struggle, were fighting with homemade guns against aircraft which were bombing the forests, or automatic weapons which were there. So that is, they too understood the complete disregard. You couldn't talk to the colonial administration. Similarly, during the second liberation, similarly, we may feel that now. And each generation finds its own conviction that this must be changed, and finds the moral courage to keep doing that. So don't hesitate at all. We are not looking at the ways in which we can be defeated. We are looking at the ways in which we can succeed, step by step. So don't hesitate, go right forward.
Thank you very much, Firoz. That is indeed enriching. We have a few comments coming in. One is asking, Livingston Nyando, how will the CSOs ensure that for future elections, we have people like Ken being elected? We can also read, someone here has said, Diana is saying yes, that was Ken in matters that were right. There was no negotiations, just asking, and it gets done. Lorna says Ken had full understanding of human rights for all, encouraged to pursue the vision. Ben is asking, sorry about that. Ben is asking whether he can run a video. I think because of time, Ben, I would prefer if you hand the video over to the team, to the technical team, your end, because it needs to be analyzed and time taken in terms of it being floated. If we are not able to float it today, which I think it will not be possible, the same can be lined up in the next session. So all is not lost. Ben, please hand over the video to the technical team near you. The other, Livingston, I have read about what Livingston has written. Livingston Nyando is also asking, what are we doing in our case to have a fully fledged cancer center to avoid losing great leaders like Ken, and also helping the less fortunate? That question, I think we can pass it to Senior Counsel Firoz Noroji. Thank you, Ben, for taking my advice. Then we have Shali. I agree, it is really important for us to ensure that Ken's vision and work continues. Ken was an exceptional human exceptional human. Odio Odongo is saying, good presentation. He's watching from where he is. Back to Honorable Waiganjo. There's a question to Honorable Waiganjo. I hope he's here with us. What changes leaders once they get into public office? Good question. They seem to change and become real politicians and forget the ambitions and expectations of their electorates. The late Ken Okoth is among the few leaders whose opinion did not get distracted and served his people passionately and with zeal. Honorable Waiganjo, I hope you're on standby. You could please take this question. Tina Lai says, wow, such inspiring words of courage and challenge in equal measure from Senior Counsel Firoz Noroji. My take home, we must remain persistent, strategic, and patient. Thank you so much, Tina Alai, for such kind words to Senior Firoz Noroji. Allow me, anonymous, someone who's not put his name is also saying, many are languishing in prison for cannabis. What happens to continuity of bills? Marijuana bill, please have it addressed in this discussion for all the people jailed who shouldn't have been. Thanks. If we have Davis Malombe, I would take that to you. If you can quickly run through it, it will be really, really kind of you. Back to Honorable Waiganjo, there's a question for you. Do we have Honorable Waiganjo still on standby?
Yes, can you hear me?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the question is that why leaders change after they are voted into office. And I think the obvious answer to that question is the intention of those leaders when they get into those offices and what the voter himself or herself wants in that leader and expectations of that voter. So that campaigns are about mobilizing voters. And in Kenya, you know, we have a culture, a political culture, which is political corruption. It's indeed a culture where the voter themselves will happily sell their votes without need to scrutinize their leaders. As a matter of fact, it's the voters themselves that get corrupt leaders in office. So that when the leader gets into the office, if a leader bought your vote and got to office, what are your expectations from that leader? I mean, they will go, they do not care. I mean, because when they learn and bribed, it was obvious their reasons to get to power was to recoup back what they have given the voter. So you wait for another 5 years for another 500 bob. In the meantime, you don't see that leader. So it depends with the voter themselves. Your leaders are your reflection completely. It's just like our police officers, for example. It is Kenyans themselves who go seeking them to bribe them and use others as their debt collectors or as people to use against rivals and all that kind of thing. So the society itself, its own reflection. Sometimes when voters complain after they have voted leaders, you wonder, how then did those leaders get into the office? And the answer is they bought their way to the office. So it is not exactly the leader who changes. It is also Wajiko or Tieno themselves who make their decisions and live with those decisions. I think the long and short answer is that one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Waiganjo. I thank you, Patricia Nyaundi, for letting me know that we have Kegoro in the house. George's hand is up. Could we kindly hear from George? George?
Can you
All
hear me?
right. Yes, we can hear you, George.
All right. Thank you very much. I joined late because a clashing activity came on board, and it could not wait. I would just only really like to record my voice and to be part of this extremely memorable day that we've all come together to put up for an extremely memorable personality, and to thank the speakers and the insights that they've brought into how we could remember Ken Okoth, who for me was a great friend, but also was an example of how to navigate political paralysis, the kind of paralysis that arises or can arise from the polarized political situation that we've had in the country. Both him and Weganjo belonged to a political caucus that was fashioned on a basis that political polarization of the nature that we have, where people are balkanized into groups and are not able to speak or act on a bipartisan level, was unacceptable, and they found ways, notwithstanding the often very strong whips that people in parliament experience from their political parties, of working together across party lines. That is a key and outstanding achievement of Ken Okoth that I would like to be recorded as part of the achievements that we are celebrating him for today. And to also say that within his political party, it was not always easy as a result of his stand and as a result of the positions he sometimes took. But the fact that he managed to maintain that balance of being of sufficient use to his party and showing sufficient loyalty to his party, while also using the support of the party to project and extend to be useful to the rest of the country, even where the party the party support was not always guaranteed. So those are some of the extremely delicate balancing acts that Ken was able to put in place, and that constitute part of why we celebrate him and should celebrate him today. So mine was just to say that, in addition to all the excellent things that have been said by our very good speakers, and also to stand with his family, to continue standing with family, and in giving the memory that we are giving to Ken through this activity today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George, for that articulation of your relationship with Ken and his work. From what we have listened and heard today, it is very clear that Ken's design of leadership, his type of leadership, was the one that the current Kenyans are craving for. Kenyans right now are looking for passion in leaders, leaders who are selfless, leaders who are guided by the rules of governance, the rules of justice, the rule of law, and constitutionalism. There is a comment from Jonjo Mue. It is nice to see you here, Jonjo. Allow me to say that Jonjo was one of my teachers at my early stages of employment, and I can never thank him enough. Jonjo is saying, Ken's true character came shining forth when Rosemary Odinga entered the race for Kibra MP in 2017 elections. Many expected Ken to abandon his party ODM and seek accommodation in another party, since Rosemary would likely get the nomination, but not Ken. He continued with his development projects and support for his party ODM and its leader, Rosemary's father, Raila. In the end, Rosemary was forced by health challenges to pull out of the race, and Ken was re-elected. Thank you, Njonjo, for that comment. Rispa Pet, our leaders have social contracts with us. We vote them, and in return, we expect them to work for us in terms of service delivery and improvement of quality of life. How can we recall them back when they do not do their supply side? Ken did great work. What is it that other leaders do not understand about development? Who oversights CDF, or it has now become a cash cow for our leadership? I'm a keen pet from Homa Bay. I would love Firoz Noroji to answer RISPA. Firoz? Firoz, please unmute your mic.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm looking at the question of how to stop losing MPs like Ken.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Yeah. I think by not overloading them, I think all MPs, but particularly there is a rule: the person who works hardest gets more work, and so that is what happens to a good representative. So our task is to support him, and we have to give, for example, to Imran, small teams who are the education team, 3-4 people. Another person is doing utilities team, checking on lighting and water and sewerage and everything in the constituency. Someone else is looking at individual injustices, employment, and so on. But these teams have, as we were talking, they must be giving the MP reliable things that he does not have to recheck himself. He should be able to trust such teams so that when they give it to him, he can move forward on them and spend that time which is saved on other things. We have to get the journalists re-educated. All of them seem to think that in Parliament, if leader of the House hits the speaker, that should be a headline. But when Ken gets through an anti-torture bill, it comes on page 15 in a small corner. And what's wrong with these journalists? Everybody has checks within their profession. When we are in court, we are not in charge of the proceedings, but we still are under a duty to make sure that things get across on behalf of our clients. And these journalists have to be re-educated and become a part of those teams. That just as Ken and Honorable Weganjo became with others, like Neto and so on, that they became known as a caucus, Human Rights Caucus. Where is the Human Rights Caucus in the journalists? So that the media has to be projecting so people can say, wow, you know, there are actually leaders who don't pocket the money that comes for the CDF. So we have to support people. We don't lose leaders like Ken by supporting them with these things. So a team which consists of a person from the constituency, a doctor, a priest, a lawyer, a policeman. These are people who quietly feed the MP with genuine facts which filter out the person looking for an attempt at getting a tender of a contract. So I think these are some of the practical ways in which we should prevent the loss of MPs coming up who are like Ken. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Firoz, for that. Allow me to read more comments coming in. Don Bosco thanks Elder Firoz Noroji for the insights and the challenge. The troubles of Kenya are the troubles of our region. Your struggles are our struggles. I'm humbled and grateful. Thank you very much, Bosco. Lydia Mthiani, picking up from Senior Feroz's brilliant keynote address, thank you for that kind. I wonder what suggestions he has with regards to mentoring, inspiring the next cohort of idealistic, persistent, courageous, and strategic human rights lawyers and defendants. I'm particularly interested on the aspect of mentorship of the next generation of human rights lawyers, especially those who undertake strategic impact litigation. We would like to have other Firoz Norojis and Thurgood Marshalls. There is a good court now which could greatly benefit from mentorship from amazing lawyers such as Firoz, Patricia Nyaundi, Njonjo, and others. And then we have David Oburu, who says, thank you for bringing us together to reflect on the late Ken Okoth contribution. Could we please comment on the appointment of new CDF boss? All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Firoz. I think you only have one to tackle from Lydia Muthiani in terms of mentorship. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Ariel. Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I think the mentorship requires some structure in terms of either university or during pupillage or even after pupillage. If that is not there or one is not part of it, I think a major aspect is systematic reading. And then the questions that arise from that, you do try and get people. I don't say that people of my generation, which is, I remember I was in class with Methuselah, and Methuselah and I used to be old friends even after we retired. And I agree, we haven't done enough to pass on in an easy form. So we have, the Law Society has tried to get some of the senior lawyers to come in and give an account of their past experiences and some dilemmas they faced and what judgments they made and so on. But it hasn't taken off as well as it could. But the LSK is alive to this issue. And now the LSK is writing a history of the LSK. So at the moment, mentorship is spotty. And it might depend more on an individual approach to people you think are exemplars. One of the things that we used to do when I joined the profession, which is many decades ago, we used to go and look at the cause list to see who was making a final submission or who was doing, which advocate was doing a cross-examination. We would go and look at D.N. Khanna, listen to him, or Achru Kapila, like that. If there were QCs making a major submission on a highly contested point of law, we would go and listen. And that tradition of standing on one side near the door, neither sitting down nor leaving, but listening and watching the judge and watching what is the impact, how do they deal with it. Those type of things are disappearing, so, or have disappeared. So I would suggest that if there is nothing organized, that one move into these areas where you can do it by yourself, by listening and watching.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rose. We really, really appreciate your contribution today. Members, allow me to take you back to Kibera at the social hall where Winnie is at. With your permission, allow me to hand over back to Winnie so that we can take a few comments and questions from the members seated at the audience. Thank you very much. Winnie, over to you.
Quite a powerful session that we've had. We've been challenged. We've had some rich discussions coming from Senior Counsel Feroz Nourji. And here in Kibera, we've got a few people who would like to ask a number of questions. So I'll go to the first speaker, a lady on my right. Would you kindly introduce yourself and ask your question?
Thank you, Winnie. My name is Imelda Ching. I work with an organization that actually was founded by Ken Okoth, and that is the Kenya Parliamentary Caucus on SDGs and Business. And for today, I don't have a question, but a comment. As we commemorate Ken's good work, I would urge the society to look at development with the angle and the eye that Ken took it with. Ken personalized development, and that is why he was able to relate to the issues that were affecting the community, because he was experiencing them by himself, having gone through a tough time growing up. And a lot of people have the challenge when it comes to personalizing development. You don't personalize the development, and that is why you end up even electing the wrong people, because you don't take it personally. I urge the society to take development personally, irrespective of what age you are in. You have the right to development, whether you're old, young, in your midlife, whether you're disabled or you're what race. Development is your right, and you need to demand for it, but it starts with you. Personalize in whatever you do. Do it to excellence. And that is how then, as a community, we are able to now come up with people who think in the same way. And that is how then we are able to drive agendas together, because at some level, then the development is no longer individual, but it's community-based. Issues like electing a leader. So if a few people have the vision and a majority of people don't have the vision, then the mission is lost. So that is what I would say for today. And we encourage all of you who are promoting Ken's work to keep doing it, because it's making a great impact in terms of sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Imelda. Another question or comment from the audience here?
Good evening. My name is Vincent Odhiambo. I'm a human rights defender from Kibera. And mine is just a comment to appreciate the work that Ken did during his days when he was a leader. And I can term him as a true leader because he worked with each and every person within the community. And he also championed for art. And we as artists, we also started something known as Art for Social Justice, which was to champion for the rights of people. And wherever he's lying, may his soul rest in peace. And lastly, I just want to challenge these leaders that are in the political offices. Kindly use your office in a good way so that by the time you leave those positions, and not necessarily the politicians, even those leaders holding these positions within the institutions, use your position well so that by the time you leave, we can remember you the way we are remembering Ken up to today. Thank you.
Do we have a final one from that end?
Good evening. My name is Terry. Just a comment also. This lecture came timely when we are celebrating the Constitution, because when you talk about leadership exemplified, I mean, Ken is what comes to mind. And yeah, just a thumbs up to the organizers that Ken Ken really embodied leadership exemplified.
And as we move towards closing, I'd like to read a comment here from Lucy Minayo. She says that Honorable Ken was a bold defender of reproductive health and rights. He participated in a community dialogue on safe abortions, which was organized by the Center for Reproductive Rights and its allies. He was keen to ensure a stoppage of deaths and injuries caused by unsafe abortions and supported preventive efforts regarding teenage pregnancies and was also supportive of law reform. He was not afraid to carry this message in the toughest of platforms. He spoke with the same conviction in the community, in parliament, and in global forums. We miss his wise counsel. And with that, I would like to ask those of us who are here in Kibera to kindly stand in honor of Honorable Ken Okoth for a minute of silence. Those joining us virtually, I would also ask you to stand if you can be able to stand. And then immediately after the moment of silence, I will bring on Honorable Imran Okoth to give us the vote of thanks. Indeed, thank you very much. We shall miss Honorable Ken Okoth, and may he continue resting in power. You may have your seat. Honorable Imran Okoth, if you can get me, this is my call on to you to come on and give us your vote of thanks. Honorable Imran Okoth was elected as the Member of Parliament to represent Kibera after the demise of his brother. But before then, he also did serve in the constituency office, where he was responsible for the implementation of many of the plans that Honorable Ken Okoth had put in place for the constituency in Kibera. And I want to believe that he still carries on with that same dream that Ken Okoth had for his people in Kibera. Karibu sana, Honorable Imran.
Thank you so much, Winnie. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's memorial lecture in memory of our late Member of Parliament, Honorable Ken Okoth. I want to start by taking this opportunity to give a hearty vote of thanks to our Senior Counsel, Firoz Norji, for gracing today's memorial lecture and delivering very informative keynote on human rights and the rule of law. Thank you so much, Senior Counsel. I'm sure that all participants have taken note too. As a current Member of Parliament and having taken over from Honorable Ken Okoth, I continue to spearhead all the development programs that Ken had started and ensure that I deliver to the people proper and international standard projects. While back I had the Senior Counsel talking about Takataka projects, I want to assure you, Senior Counsel, we will deliver quality projects for the people. Kibera people deserves better, and we'll always stick to that. The best of standards. They are not a lesser people. They are the same people that you'll find in any part of this country or any part of the world. So we'll always stick to making sure that we do projects that are commensurate to the funding that we get out there. I also pledge to uphold the rule of law highly. I'm also looking forward to working together with all the CSOs represented here to make sure that the fundamental human rights are upheld with respect and dignity to each and everyone. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the organizers for the good work. I remember a few weeks back, we sat with Patricia Nyaudi and Elsie in regards to commemorating the 1 year since Mheshimiwa passed on. And we were thinking of what kind of activity can we do to remember this great man that all of us rubbed shoulder with, interacted with, and he left a big gap in our lives. And this was one of them. I didn't know it will be like this today, but I want to thank all the organizers who put their efforts to make sure that it is a reality. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the participants at Kibera Secondary School. That is one of the projects that Mheshimiwa started in 2017 towards the election. And all of you remember that immediately after election for his second term, Mheshimiwa was diagnosed with cancer, stage 4. And we had to continue with the good work that he had started even during his first term. That project is also almost coming to completion, and we are doing a great job. And I know all the participants there have seen the kind of workmanship that has gone through that project, and it is indeed a great project. Senior Counsel, you will be one of my guests when we will be officially handing it over. We are looking forward to hand over this project in another 1 month or so. So we will continue with the good work. I want to assure you. Thank you, everyone, and God bless you all. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Imran, for those remarks. I want to take us back to Harriet. Harriet, can you get me? Do you get me, Harriet?
Yes, I can.
All right. Yeah. So I want to hand over to you, Harriet, to do the closing remarks. The parting shots with our panelists.
Thank you very much, Winnie. Over to our panelists. One word that you can leave us with, your parting shots. We can start with Patricia Nyaundi. Senior Patricia Nyaundi.
Thank you, Harriet and Winnie for wonderful facilitation. Thank you, Honorable Waiganjo. Thank you, Agrippina. Thank you, George Kegoro. Thank you, my friend Malombe. And of course, to Senior Counsel Feroz. I will leave this session with your words around ideals and transforming them into action. It's been a wonderful session, and it's really exciting to even see those who joined in challenging us to keep the vision of Ken Okoth alive. And I think that's what all of us on the call are committed to do. So thank you very much, and do have a great evening to everyone.
Thank you very much, Senior Counsel Patricia Nyaundi. We could hear the parting shots from Senior Counsel Firoz Noroji. Over to you, Senior Firoz. Please unmute your mic.
Thank you, Harriet. Thank you. Just to say, as we always say in court, I adopt all the words of Senior Patricia Nyaundi and say that it was a pleasure to be all of us together, speakers and contributants and participants. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Firoz. Kindly, could we hear the parting shots from Honorable Waiganjo? Honorable Waiganjo, your parting shot.
I want to thank everybody for, especially the organizers of this very important memorandum, and I am especially excited because of seeing familiar faces that we have done many things with. I particularly enjoyed the Senior Counsel Firosi Nauroji's advice to a question where he was asked about mentorship. And he said that one of the ways is to go to court and watch counsel who you admire presenting their cases or making their submissions. And I am one of those who have appeared many times in Firosi Nauroji's matters without even his knowledge. I watched him since I was a student and later as an intern and much later as a practicing advocate. So that's an appropriate advice. I thank you all. Asanteni sana sana.
Thank you very much, Honorable Waiganjo. Ladies and gentlemen, you can agree with me that it's almost, it's now 4:32, but we almost feel like we should continue having this discussion, and that is how rich this discussion has been. There is a request that we keep supporting, or we support the center that Ken Okoth started in any way, and anyone who is willing to advance any kind of support, please feel free to get in touch with Winnie Siombua. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to a close, allow me to say that the webinar has been exceptional. We might have had our expectations. Personally, I honestly feel that we have surpassed our expectations for this webinar. Good lessons learned and enough wisdom harnessed from our panelists. Our panelists, we can never thank you enough. Senior Counsel Firoz Noroji, thank you very much. Senior Counsel Patricia Nyaundi, thank you very much. And I can assure you many young women look up to you, Patricia. Honorable Waiganjo, thank you very much for finding time to share with us. The organizers of this webinar, we can never thank you enough, and more so giving us, all of us, an opportunity to share in the life of Ken Okoth and those who he left behind. Agrippina, thank you for carrying the banner of Ken Okoth. Please keep doing the good work that you're doing. Without forgetting beautiful Monica. Thank you so much, Monica, for being part of this webinar, for always being there, and for holding the hand of the people that Ken Okoth left behind. Honorable Imran, it is obvious that you're continuing with the candle that Ken Okoth lit. We can never ask for more other than for you to keep that memory shining. To KHRC, George Kegoro, thank you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. Thank you, Davis Malombe. Thank you very much, Martin, for always keeping us in check, ensuring that we've had a very successful session, which I want to believe, even from the comments that are coming in, that all of us are feeling rich as we end this session. To my partner and moderator, Winnie, thank you for making me look so good today. If we were having a one-on-one session, I would have forced the participants to clap for us. But since we are not together, thank you so much for being part of this and for enriching this discussion. I could have never asked for any other moderator, but you have helped us and you've done an excellent job. I can never thank you enough. To the members seated in Kibra, leaders are because of who we are. Ken Okoth was because of you. And it's for that reason only that we should continue with his dream, we should continue with his aspirations, and we should continue carrying his name forward. With that much ado, allow me to say thank you very much. Have a blessed Friday. Have a lovely weekend and may God bless you all. Asanteni sana. I will hand it over back to the KHRC team. Davis Malombe, maybe we can close with a word of prayer, but after closing remarks from your end. Thank you.